What's up, everyone? Welcome back to A Method to the Madness, the podcast where we offer our insights and analysis to our favorite movies. I'm your host, Patrick Laverne, and joining me is my co-host, Mitchie Hartnett. How you doing, Mitchie?
Good, Pat. How you going?
Yeah, pretty good, considering what we're covering today, which is Uncut Gems, the 2019 film directed by the Safdie Brothers, starring our favorite subpar comedian, Adam Sandler.
Favorite, eh? Not gonna lie, before watching this movie, I really didn't like Adam Sandler, but I like him now. He's a good actor.
That seems to be the general consensus. People knew he had some drama chops, because he did this movie called Punch Drunk Love, I think it was called.
Yeah.
By the PTA, Paul Thomas Anderson, who's, if you've seen any of his films, you kind of know that isn't Sandler's usual gig. So yeah, this is just sort of another time that he's proved himself. I don't know why all these years he's kept making the movies he has when he's got this much talent, but no.
Yeah.
As always, we're gonna go around, just give our general overall impressions of the film. Mitchie, what'd you think of this?
I loved it. Like, we really need to review a bad movie for once, because all the movies we review are good, and I feel like I say the same thing all the time, which is yeah, it's good, I love it. But I really did like this movie. It's I don't know. I'm keen to see another movie that'll top this one for 2020, because this is the first movie from this year that have reviewed. And yeah, it hit me real hard. It's I don't know. Well, we'll get into it, but it's a very strange movie and it's unique. And I've not watched a movie like this before, where I felt so anxious after watching it. I felt so vulnerable in a sense. And the ideas it kind of pokes at are just phenomenal, and the way it pulls it off is phenomenal. It's all subconscious, you just feel it without actually noticing it, and then you kind of think about it and you're like, oh wow, that's how they did it. But you don't really need to think about it to actually get these feelings. You just need to experience and enjoy the movie.
Did you say this movie was made in 2020?
Yeah, isn't it?
It's a 2019 film.
Well, is it off US release, or because it's released in Christmas last year in the US, but other parts of the world it was in January.
Yeah, okay, true.
And I feel a bit for this one should be on the Oscar awards for this year if it gets nominated for something, because it's too late in last year for it to be successful as part of the 2019 Oscars.
Did it? Was it not in the Oscars last year?
Nah.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, yeah. Fair enough.
I hope not. I mean, it does say the 2019 thriller. Maybe, okay.
Okay, yeah. So, I also absolutely love this film. It's weird. It makes me feel weird. It's as if it's the complete opposite feeling I get when I watch American Beauty, which we will get into later on. It's this kind of spiritual wrongness that it imbues into you, and it just kind of leaves you feeling wrong. There's no better way to say that. It's just... But the thing is, it seems like it is wrong, but it works in this kind of ineffable way. The fact that they make this wrongness work is a testament to how well this film is crafted, and we'll get into that.
Cool.
So, yeah, Mitchie, why don't you take us through a quick summary of the events?
Yes, so, Uncut Gems follows the story of Howard Ratner, who's acted by Adam Sandler, a perhaps too stereotypical Jewish jeweler in New York. Howard has a severe gambling issue. To deal with his debt, Howard sources a precious and very expensive black opal gem from the mines of Ethiopia. Almost immediately upon receiving it, he shows the gem to Kevin Garnett, who's a very famous NBA basketball player, for those people who didn't know, because I didn't, and he's acted by himself. He's a big shot Boston Celtic basketballer who immediately has some sort of spiritual connection with this gem that Howard Ratner presents to him, and he believes that it will give him the power to win the NBA championship. Just for reference, the movie's set in 2012, and it actually follows loosely the actual events of the NBA championship that Kevin Garnett played in. Being a pushover, Howard lends the gem to Kevin because Kevin really wants to keep it to give him the power to win the game. And so passes an unnerving series of events that keeps you on the edge of your seat as Howard slowly tumbles down a rabbit hole of incessant and crazy gambling. Nothing ever seems to go in his favor until eventually he wins out massively on a risky bet. You feel like his stupid brazenness the whole movie has finally paid off until he's abruptly shot dead by an irate debt collector. The film ends as a camera falls into the bullet hole in Howard's face, revealing the dazzling colours of the internals of the gem, morphing into the cold and lonely expanses of the starry universe. And there we go. That's the plot summary I have.
Brilliant. So, this film's got a strange kind of, like, bookend. We start from the universe, out Adam Sandler's arsehole, and then at the end we go into Adam Sandler's face and go back into the universe.
Yeah, so for context, we zoom into the gem at the start. The gem that's, I guess, the whole movie centered around. And then it comes out of his arsehole, right? After going through the universe a little bit. So yeah, I guess it is very cyclic in that sense. I must say, one of the biggest parts of this movie for me is just, I don't know if this is a good way to start off, but the cinematography is actually really great in this movie, and it won an award for it, actually. The cinematography itself was an award winner in this movie. And that combined with the music kind of gives us a whole anxious feeling in the movie, in my opinion. I mean, in my opinion, this movie nails the music really well. Like, it's such a weird movie, right? Like, the philosophy behind this movie is bizarre, and it's kind of like two unrelated contexts, two unrelated things. We've got the story of a gambler and the story of, I don't know, a gem, I guess, and the universe and a greater idea of the universe, and also the Ethiopian story as well. And the music does a really, really good job of combining the two. It's sort of like a combination between, like, it's very synthy, like Stranger Things, like, you know, the theme for that, like real like bassy synthy kind of stuff, but it's like combined with like some sort of like almost theological kind of music from like Hereditary or something like that. It's a really unique kind of score, and I really like, that's one of the greatest bits of the movie I appreciate is the score itself. I think it does a fantastic job of conveying the feelings that you're meant to feel, that the Safdie Brothers want you to feel while you're watching the movie. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, it kind of does like evoke some sort of theological mood, I guess. Yeah, I guess because it's paired with the imagery of the universe, and I don't quite know how to describe the quality of like mood that music evokes. It's almost like it's pensive, but it doesn't really give you time to think. It's like,
I guess it's a combo of like this, what we're going to talk about later, but like kind of like adulterating something sublime, right? Like, yeah, you're perverting something that's sublime, and that's what the music is. It's like, it's meant to be some sort of kind of sublime divine music. There's a lot of chanting in it that kind of alludes to like kind of, you know, worshipping and stuff like that, like something about a greater good, and so much more than just Howard Ratner's life. Yet it's just adulterated by all these real like jarring 80s/90s kind of synths and deep bass and stuff you'd kind of listen to in a club kind of thing. So like, yeah, I think it is reflected in the music very well. I mean,
yeah, that bit about how it kind of resembles chanting is interesting. That you're totally right. Like, yeah, it's as if I'm not sure what it's called when like Muslims pray on their mat, but you know, there's a lot of the time there's someone kind of doing an ohm like resonance. Yeah, I know, you're right, it is a kind of similar feeling.
I'll have it. You don't do that here, sir. Look at door.
Meridians.
Okay. All right, he's not answering.
He knows you're calling. He doesn't want to deal with you anymore.
I understand.
No, I don't think you're doing this. Come on.
So we've been talking about this quality of wrongness that pervades this film. This took me a long time to articulate. I feel like it's a thing that's not meant to be articulated almost, because, you know, that's the magic of the mood that this movie creates, is that you don't know why you feel sort of wrong, but you just do. Anyway, being the genius that I am, I've dissected this for you all, so you're welcome.
Better be good.
So, what this movie does is it combines elements of the sublime and the perverted. So, let's start with the title, Uncut Gems. It's a reflection of the imperfection of the reality in this film. So, the gem part refers to everything that is sacred and sublime about the universe. In this case, it's referring to the part about being human. So take the portrayal of Howard, for example. He's constantly in flux between sympathetic and deplorable. like the Uncut Gem, on the outside, Howard is a rough, highly sordid individual, but we sympathize with him because we see the vulnerability and / the beauty / the humanity within him. So take, for example, he really loves his family and his kids. When he gets Garnett's ring, because he knows his kid is a fan, he immediately shows him. And, you know, in another scene when he's meant to be putting his kid to sleep, he seems to care more about like the basketball game than spending time with his kid. So he's got this kind of, dichotomy about him, this very distinct one. And yeah, it's a cool parallel.
Yeah, I can see that. He is a very confusing character, isn't he? Kind of like and hate him at the same time. I mean, he has good intentions. Like the scene where he obviously watches, the scene at the school where he's got to watch his daughter's performance, and afterwards she's getting a cake from the fridge. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And like she doesn't give a fuck about him. She's just speaking on the phone with her friend, and he's trying to speak to her, you know, have some father-daughter bond time kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And like you just feel so sorry for him in that instance. Like you could, and this is where like Sandler's acting is like so important in conveying these ideas about Howard Ratner as a character, because he just pulls it off so well, because you can kind of see like the anguish internally in him, even though he's always smiling all the time. Like he always appears happy, but inside of him he's always like internally, I don't know, thinking about things and not actually happy. And that was such a great scene where it was actually well done. Like you could kind of see the pain he was going through when his daughter was ignoring him, but what can he do about it, you know? He can't tell his daughter off of that. So yeah,
it really highlights the imperfection of his life.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Well, not just, you know, imperfection as in nothing's quite terrible, nothing's quite really good. It's just like this weird, awkward middle ground where he still has a connection with his family. It's just they don't really give a fuck.
Yeah.
But, you know, at least he still does have a connection. Like, yeah, it's weird.
But at the end of the day, the reason why they don't like him is his own fault as well.
Yeah, exactly. So this aspect is also reflected in the technical aspect of the filmmaking. So you have this really kind of naturalistic acting. And by that I mean it's not sort of traditionally fictitious. Like it's take a Nolan film, for example, where one character's dialogue and then the other, you know, has their lines, 2 or 3 lines, and then it's just this back and forth, like this really kind of polite conversation where they let each other finish. And you take this film and it's people talk over each other, and it's this kind of like unclean language, not like profanity, but
yeah,
it's not polished. It's as if, you know, it's people just actually talking, saying stuff off the cusp of their head. And yeah, it gives off this kind of naturalistic vibe. Anyway, it's contrasted against this really high contrast cinematography they have. So high contrast cinematography, if you don't know, is when colors are really sort of lurid and they stand apart from each other, and it doesn't look very realistic. It looks, you know, fantastical almost. And that plus the very, you know, synthetic music, which we talked about earlier, it's this opposite quality of realism and non-realism that this film just mashes together. And yeah, it creates this weird feeling, as we've been talking about. It's just...
Yeah, it's almost like a the way I looked at it was like, I mean, you're right in terms of the dialogue. Like it's the third time I watched the film, I didn't watch it with subtitles, and I found it a lot harder to follow. Like like the whole scene with Kevin Garnett looking at the stone, KG looking at the stone and stuff the first time. Like they're just all talking over each other, you know, like normal people. But like and you can't really understand a lot of it, and like, or even the very start scene when the music's so loud. The music is like louder than the dialogue, and you're like, are you really meant to understand what they're saying to each other or not? Like, but yeah, it doesn't seem too important or imperative. You kind of get the idea of what's going on anyway. Yeah, and that all kind of, to me, made me feel like it was almost like a documentary in a sense. Like we're kind of having a snapshot of Howard Ratner's life, you know, and I guess that links to what we'll probably say about the whole idea of the movie being just about a human life, you know, which, you know, it's no different to anyone else's life, and that's what this movie is about. It is about just someone's life, which is Howard Ratner, who happens to have a very intriguing and interesting life of very dangerous gambling.
Yeah, it does give off a documentary kind of feel, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay. Oh fuck, alright, this is a bit of a tenuous connection to this topic, but In the end scene where Howard makes Arno and his goons watch him watch the game, it's like a microcosm of everything going right for him. You know, as in he's doing well with his bet as he's watching the game. He's in a position of power, which, you know, throughout the whole film he hasn't been, compared to at least Arno and his goons. And it's kind of twisted if you look at the larger context, because in reality he's only in this situation because everything up until that point has gone extremely wrong for him. And as we will see, it continues to go wrong for him after that. Anyway, his elation in this final scene far surpasses any other joy we see him receive in the film. It's as if he's more fulfilled by this than anything else, like his family or any meaningful connection. And that's why his death is so bittersweet. It's because we know his life probably wouldn't have gotten any better than this. And so he goes out on like the highest note he can. But he still dies. Yeah, it's like when you look at the movie as a whole, it's this weird confluence of joy and fucked upness. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you?
No. Wait, I do. So you're saying that the movie is bittersweet? Yeah, I get that. I mean, Howard's life, in a sense, is...
Well, like, it's, you know, it's because he is so happy in this last scene. And it's everything around this scene. It's, you know, it's horrible for him. And, you know, he dies at this peak of happiness that he has.
Yeah.
And it's like, that will just forever be, you know, his final moments. But the way he got there and like the implications of what would have happened afterwards if he hadn't have died, really kind of like sad, honestly. It's
yeah. I mean, he's yeah. Like as a character, he's, you know, he's a failure of a person. Like he can never be successful, and I guess to be killed like that by his own devices indirectly, like he causes his own death really, because he's the one that puts the money on the bet and traps the people in the little doorway. Yeah, you're right. Like it's inevitable, right? Like that's the way I look at it. Like it was always going to happen. There was no way he could ever break out of that. Like he was always going to end up dead, probably because he had this incessant habit of betting, you know. And like what kind of even accentuates that even more is the fact that he didn't have colon cancer. And it seems like a random aspect of the movie, but it's kind of important to realize that Howard could never die from something that wasn't his own fault. As in, the colon cancer wouldn't have been his own fault, sort of. If he had it, he would have died, and he would have died from something that wasn't his own fault. But in this case, he doesn't have it because the only way he can die is by his own way, by his own inevitability and his own thought process and his decisions.
That didn't even occur to me. That is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think because of why. I mean, I was just kind of think about it, like, what's the point including that in there? Like, I think the Safdie brothers do kind of discuss it a little bit. They do link it, the whole colon cancer and Jewish people having it, to Howard Ratner's life, and I mean that's the way I interpreted it anyway.
So yeah, you know, just to wrap that all up, it's like, yeah, this little pocket of happiness amongst this backdrop of tragedy. It just adds to this conflicting mood that the movie, you know, strives for.
Don't look at me.
What the fuck happened to you?
Don't look at me, please. I don't know what I'm thinking. I don't know. Everybody's not ever going right.
I know.
I'm so sad. I'm so fucked up.
So what we just discussed about the wrongness of this film, I like how they add to this quality with this motif of like chaos theory, or just like the randomness of the universe, and it kind of adds this cynical flair to this wrongness we were talking about. So take the beginning scene with the Ethiopian miners. Everything about this scene is so wildly different and detached from the events of the film. From a plot perspective, it's unnecessary, as it could have been implied rather quickly. If you cut out that scene, you probably would have been able to gather how he got the stone, because they do actually talk about it. Anyway, but, you know, the fact that it is so detached is what illustrates the theme of chaos so viscerally. When you see the whole film and then you look back, you realize that all the events of the film, specifically all the events of Howard Ratner, happened because of the butterfly effect that proliferated from this one event in Ethiopia. And, you know, as I said, like, they didn't have to include that scene, but the fact that they did, and more so the fact that it opens with that scene, is just like, I love it. It just really, it forces you to be in that sort of cynical mindset of chaos and like meaninglessness. And this is also another big way this is illustrated is at the end of the film when he gets killed by Arno's goon. And if you remember, this person didn't even have a name. He was just some angry looking cunt. And
I think
it's an example.
He gets called by his name once by Arno.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, because I kept an eye out for it.
No.
And near out, I guess I should say. And but yeah, I mean, unless you're paying attention, yeah, he basically is nameless. So I'm not even going to say what his name is.
Yeah, and you know, like, he is more of like a well, I don't know. I don't know if he has more of a presence than Arno, but he certainly appears before Arno does. And you know, it's this sort of traditional thing you see in a lot of movies of first you deal with the henchman, and then the henchman takes you to his like sort of secretive boss. And you know, that's because he is sort of not present. He has this more intimidating like feel to him. And you know, that's I think that's what it was trying to get at in that scene where they take him to the car and Arno's in the front seat. And he's like, "Stop saying my name." You know, he's trying to evoke that sort of like big boss kind of feel. And so throughout the film, you think Arno is the one to be worried about, right?
Yeah.
And then in the end, he just kills him, and then he kills Arno. And it's like, yeah, it's Arno wasn't shit. It was like this guy you had to worry about the whole time. This guy that you didn't really think anything of. So yeah, that's just like an example of how significant this unpredictability plays out in the film. And there are a bunch of like really kind of little examples spread throughout the film. One of the examples I like is when Howard's, after he puts his kid to sleep, because he put a bet on the game, he really wants to, you know, watch it. So he begs his wife to let him switch to the basketball game. And, you know, if you know that, well, if you've seen the film, you know sort of his wife's disposition toward him. She's not a fan, obviously, and then he switches to the basketball game, which is clearly really important to him. And then the first thing that shows up is some like really fat dude just flashing his gut at the camera. It's like this, you know, like
during
really
like an ad, like a break in the
yeah. It's like such unfortunate timing. It's you know, the equivalent of when your parents walk in when you're watching a movie during the one sex scene in that movie.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it just gives off the wrong impression of what it is.
Yeah.
And obviously, you know, basketball in all sports, it's infinitely, maybe not infinitely, but it's super complex. You know, that's why there's such an appeal for it. But like the perception that his wife must have of it after that, it just like kind of diminishes any sort of respect that she might have had for him.
Yeah.
And, you know, that comes back to haunt him later on when he's at the dinner and she, you know, he's kind of trying to win her back and she's like, nah.
A lot of it is just like, it seems to me that Howard is just a really unlucky guy. Like, these events are random, right? Like, it could have stopped on that random bit on the fat guy and made him look bad in front of his wife. Or it could have stopped on the game, you know? And there's, like, other points as well. Like, when he gives the Rolex to the guy who takes his money for the bet and he doesn't want the Rolex. And when he goes home to his girlfriend's place and he bought a dinner or something like that, but she bought the same dinner as well. So he kind of wasted his money buying the same dinner. Like these are deliberate plot constructions to make him seem unlucky because these are random events. Like there's nothing that dictates these happening aside from the fact that he's just literally unlucky. Yet, you know, normally we don't really believe in luck. A lot of people don't believe in luck, but it seems like in this case that Howard Ratner really does suffer from some sort of bad luck.
Yeah.
And a lot of this is what, in a sense, could contribute to his downfall. And it's kind of an interesting point, like, you make there, because, like, I don't know, like, it seems like he's kind of almost determined, his life is sort of determined by something else, like something that he has no control over. Yet, his downfall is inevitably due to his own decisions.
Yeah, that is interesting. And, you know, all of this, it's super ironic because he is a chronic gambler, you know, at the end of the day. Like, I don't know. Well, you know, obviously...
Yeah, like, you don't want to be a gambler and unlucky. Like, they're two bad traits to have together. And that's what he is.
Yeah. Yeah, poor guy.
For me, this movie made me feel, as I said before, very anxious after watching it. And I think it did for you as well, Pat. And pretty much everyone that actually watches this movie. And the reason for that is because, well, I think the movie, in some sense, is a cosmic horror. And by that, I mean a movie that makes you feel what is actually referred to as cosmicism, which is sort of a H.P. Lovecraft idea that, I don't know if that's where it originally came from, but a lot of it is alluded to him and his ideas of Lovecraft cosmicism, which is that we are nothing in this universe of such expansiveness. And, you know, as human beings, we are insignificant little creatures. And I guess it's kind of the opposite of what people believe in Christianity or Buddhism or whatever. Like, we are not insignificant, we are very significant, and that when we die we do go somewhere because we're important people. But in cosmicism it's the opposite of that, and the movie alludes to a lot of that. I mean, obviously there is some sort of allusion to universal, like, big scale things, because we go into the shots of the gem and it kind of looks like space, literally, and the movie ends on a starry sky, you know, of stars and stuff, which seems unrelated to the topic of Howard Ratner, yet it seems to kind of mesh into it so well. And I'm much more aligned with the cosmicist theory than religious theory. I mean, you know, the universe is huge and we are nothing in it, but what's beautiful about it is that, I guess, what it's trying to say is that Howard Ratner's story is insignificant. You know, he dies and, like, no one's going to give a shit. You know, he's a dead man, and after the events of his death, you know, no one's really going to care in the grand scheme of things, right? He tried to put his mark on the world. He tried to do something significant and win a lot of money, but at the end of the day, he died. And that's the path and inevitability of all of our destinies, right? We all eventually die at some point in our lives. But with all of our stories, these individual stories are still connected to other stories in a way. And I see the parallel there with the gem, where the gem inside the rock is millions of years old, and it's seen so many stories, and it's seen so much of the earth pass in history. And at the same time, Howard Ratner's story, while insignificant alone, it combines with all the other stories that he's interconnected with, and he's kind of experienced, and it kind of embodies all of human life and stories in that way.
Yeah, despite how insignificant this story may have seemed, Howard Ratner still was an integral part of, like, a lot of other lives. And I really love, after he dies, it kind of, you know, it shows the different characters he's associated with, like, what they're up to at that time. And obviously his girlfriend, you know, it's clear throughout the film that she actually really kind of does love him. Yeah. And obviously, like, you know, she's just won more than $1 million, and she's probably excited to, you know, share that with him. And there's that bit where his kids are watching the basketball game, and then his son's like, "My dad sold the ring to that guy," and he's clearly, like, he clearly very much looks up to his dad. Yeah. And I don't know, I just thought that little moment was, like, really poignant. Like,
it is, yeah.
It could be because it's so far outweighed by, you know, the insignificance. Yeah. But they did just throw that one little thing in there about how his kid admires him, and at the end, like, yeah, I really love that.
Yeah, it shows his impact on the world, you know, like, he did have some sort of small impact. And that's the point of in my opinion, what the first scene is about. It's meant to show that we have all these different stories across the world. Like, so we have the Ethiopian miner's story, and on the other side of the world, this thing is happening. They're mining gems here, and then all the way in New York in the Diamond District, you have Howard Ratner, and it links those two stories together, you know. And when we finish the movie on a starry sky full of stars, like the credits literally roll on the star-filled sky, it's kind of just alluding to all of those things. Like, I don't know, I was going to say something good then, I fucked it up, but yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I love how the connection between Ethiopia and New York isn't, well, rather, the connection between Howard Ratner and the Ethiopian miners isn't just space, it's also time, because it's like 2 years after. So it's just like, yeah, it's as much of a tenuous connection as you can get, but it is still a connection. And yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Why's it got so many colors in it, man? What is this?
That's the thing. They say you can see the whole universe in opals. That's how fucking old they are.
Holy shit.
I've been telling you. That's why I want you to see it.
I gotta have it.
Yo, that's crazy, man.
It's fucking from stone to stone. Garnet to stone, you know that. That's $1 million opal you're holding. Straight from the Ethiopian Jewish tribe. I mean, this is old school, Middle Earth shit.
Got a motherfucking dinosaur gym in this, man.
The dinosaurs, that's right. The dinosaurs fucking stared at this thing. It's 110 million years old, at the least. Can't lean on glass.
Last year, my roommate introduced me to this category of films called Dharma films. Now, I've looked this up, and I don't think it's a legit terminology, but I mean, there probably is another name for these kind of movies. I just haven't found it. If you know what it is, you should let us know. Anyway, Dharma films are what we call it. Dharma films are films that evoke the total reality of the universe, that leaves a viewer with a sense of cosmic scale and distancing from human conflict, almost like reaching a state of nirvana. So it's not necessarily like the works of H.P. Lovecraft that Mitchie just referenced. Those do give a sense of cosmic scale, but at the end of the day, it's about the insignificance of human conflict, whereas Dharma films are about the importance of them. My favorite example of this is American Beauty. So in American Beauty, Lester reaches nirvana by his internal transformation. He kind of rises above all the ideas and this framework of reality he had in his head for his whole life. And yeah, he rose above it and discovered, pretty much like spiritual fulfillment is what that movie's about. And so the dharmic quality of the feeling that it leaves you with at the end, it feels earned because you go through that transformation with Lester. Whereas Howard doesn't really have any change throughout this movie. He's a chronic gambler at the beginning, he's a chronic gambler at the end, and it's implied that he will have continued to do so if he had stayed alive. And yeah, so the dharmic quality at the end of this film feels wrong, and that's reflected in all the ways we've been talking about this last 40 minutes. And it does imbue this dharmic quality in you, as we talked about, like this emphasis on like cosmic scale and the universe and stuff. When the film commits to this sublimeness at the end by zooming through the rock again and then into the universe, it feels hollow and wrong, and it leaves the viewer feeling like nothing had any significance. My point is, it's pretty much the opposite, or like not the opposite, it's just like an inverse feeling of the end of American Beauty.
Okay.
Which you haven't seen, Mitchie, which you should.
Yeah, I will see that sometime, mainly because Sam Mendes.
Hell yeah. And yeah, it's weird how it's a movie about Kevin Smith. I mean, what's his name?
Kevin Spacey.
Kevin Spacey fawning for an underage girl.
Whoa. That's
before the allegations.
Very, very controversial topic.
Yeah.
Mate. Yeah.
It's almost like it was foretold.
Wow. Conspiracy there. Yeah.
So that about wraps it up for Uncut Gems. So we're going to start doing this quick final segment of recommendations, stuff we've been watching / reading / playing throughout the week. I just completed HBO's Watchmen series. That was phenomenal. I'm a huge fan of the graphic novel, and that was a very interesting continuation of that story. And the score for that show by Trent Reznor is also amazing. So yeah, I'd highly recommend it.
Yeah, I know Trent Reznor. Yeah, he's a good composer. I like his music. Very ambient.
What have you got?
Me, what have I been watching? I've been watching Breaking Bad again for like, I don't know, the 4th or 5th time.
Fuck yeah.
If you've seen Breaking Bad already, watch it again.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen Breaking Bad already, then I'd highly recommend watching it because, if you haven't seen it, it's pretty fucked.
Yeah, what's wrong with you?
Patrick and I have great plans for this podcast and making the Breaking Bad kind of podcast, I guess, because we fucking love the show and it's perfect, and we just want to just talk the shit out of it, out of every single episode or something, obviously. So in preparation for that, I'd highly recommend watching it. It's good.
All right, that concludes this episode of A Method to the Madness. Thanks for listening. If you have any thoughts, insights, or opinions that you'd like to send to us, you can. We have an email address, mail@amttm.com. And you can find this podcast and our others on Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube.
And our website, amttm.com.
And our next movie we will be reviewing will be, what, Contagion?
Yeah, Contagion. We're going to make this one a bit topical. It's about time we... Well, the way I look at it, we've reviewed very new movies that are very contemporary, released right now. This is a bit of an older movie, 2011, but seems very related to the whole situation of the world right now. So I think it'll be a good one to do.
Yeah, interesting. All right, sweet. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.